Welcome. You're connected to transmissions from the campfire. I am the operator. Our narratives of the odd, the humorous, and the downright horrifying serve to provide a brief respite from the cruel, cold winds of reality, and in turn bring a measure of warmth to those weary souls that just might need it the most. Perhaps then, the memories of humanity may live on, if only for a moment. This original tale is written and performed by Valley horror author Patrick Quinn Kitson, whose works include short story compilations Night, Day, and the newly released collection Bonedale, available now. Production and engineering is by me, Daniel Kelley. Tonight's transmission brings a tale of requital. The cultural memory of humanity is short, and historical injustices are quickly replaced by contemporary distractions. But while people are perfectly content to let the past fade away into the fog of time, not everything forgets quite so readily. And what happens when that memory evolves into appetite? Now, please, sit back, savor your drink of choice, and enjoy. This is Soil.
On Halloween in the Roaring Fork Valley, hardly anyone knows of nor actively engages with any of the local lore. And really, why would they? This valley we love so dearly, an all too sweet expanse of ridge-nestled townships and picturesque communities that occupy the narrows running alongside the Roaring Fork and Crystal Rivers, is chock full of legends and hauntings and various beings of darkness which largely go unnoticed and oft forgotten by the residents of today. Nobody dances with the ghouls on this fateful holiday. They don't pay their histories any mind on Halloween. And if we're shooting straight, they rarely if ever do on any day of the year either. With the evolution of technology and the proliferation of its varied electronically facilitated distractions over the last few decades, not many folks spend a lot of time looking up from their screens long enough to spot the terrors that lurk behind the sun-dappled rocks and lush green swaths of the valley walls. Our collective history fades concurrently with our diminishing interest in it. At least, that's what usually happens. Not always, though, because sometimes there is something so bad, so heinous, dare I say so evil, that it leaves a residue of the area's past sins in its stead, sins that seep deep into the soil, horrors which penetrate the very ground underfoot, festering and eventually becoming the source of an invisible, unknowable contagion, one which, if left unchecked, can plague the area without any future generations of occupants knowing why. Now, I'm just going to say this out loud because it's high time someone does. Crazy as it may sound, there is in fact such an ancient evil that soils the very earthen floor under the spot where the Redstone Inn and Restaurant in Redstone, Colorado currently resides. Surely you've heard of such a place. It's a tale as old as time. Haunted places in Colorado go together like peanut butter and jelly. But what's different up in shady all-day Redstone is that the horrors of the past come back like clockwork to haunt the present on each and every Hallows Eve. To be specific, the Redstone Inn chooses one person per year, does God knows what with the body of its victim, absorbs their spirit and deposits the skeletal remains into a subterranean grotto, basement if we're being generous, situated deep below the property you see on your favorite travel website. But you won't read about it on any tourist brochure, and Hotels.com conveniently won't mention all the bodies in the basement. No travel TV show is going to tell you that every Halloween one person is psychically summoned to the grounds of the Redstone Inn to serve as its sacrifice. And if this whole sordid affair sounds like something out of a Spielberg production of a Tobe Hooper film starring Jo Beth Williams and Craig T. Nelson, I get it. Believe me, I get it. It sounds as crazy to say as I'm sure it is to hear, but I assure you, with God as my witness, the Redstone Inn is most definitely eating people up. Like a fat man in an Olive Garden bib slurping down spaghetti and meatballs, so too does the hotel devour and digest its fleshy meals with reckless abandon, tossing the sucked-down bones into the subterra below the hotel in much the same way we toss wing bones back into a red basket at our favorite watering hole. Every Halloween, somebody goes there, and every Halloween, the hotel gobbles up their essence and craps their bones into the basement, not far from where the staff stores the wine racks. And it's all because of that other wildly unoriginal, time-worn marker of Colorado's checkered history with its indigenous population of yore, the all-too-common tale of the profiteering white man fucking with the natives for his own ends. I wish it was something more original, but it ain't. It wasn't the hotel that killed anyone back then, you see. Actually, the hotel may have been constructed in 1902, but this was long after the Utes and several other nomadic Native American tribes had ceased to frequent the narrows of the Roaring Fork Valley. They'd all but disappeared in the mid to late 1800s in response to the gross influx of nature-shredding, land-defiling white men and more than a few white women pouring in and pushing them out. Manifest destiny, westward expansion in all its bloody glory. And the new arrivals made that destiny manifest by displacing, plundering, and often violently taking ownership of the land from the native peoples who'd made the valley their sometimes home for over 800 years previous. One such surreptitious removal of the native population took place early in the morning hours of October 31st, 1894. By that fateful date, it had already been quite some time since any Native Americans had frequented the Roaring Fork Valley near modern-day Redstone. In truth, by the 1880s, the writing was on the proverbial wall. The white man cometh, and the white man taketh away. He cared nothing for the darker-skinned folks, and most of those tribes which traveled seasonally through the Cross Valley expanse had made their way west in a fruitless attempt to avoid the unavoidable stampede of Oregon trailers and mineral seekers, the money-mad barons and amoral land grabbers. It was a dark, cold, and frosty morning in the area now known as Redstone on October 31st, 1894. A few settlers had begun to plant their flag along the Crystal River, but none as enterprising and wholly destructive as the nefarious Osgood clan, a ragtag assemblage of ne'er-do-well homesteaders led by Sir Timothy Cabot Osgood III, the arch-baron of some old property in Britannia, who knows which. Now immigrated to America, seeking their fortunes in the mineral-rich hills of snowy Colorado, the unscrupulous clan had their run of the land. If a small family had set up shop nearby, their family members would often start disappearing until somebody signed a paper ceding the land to the Osgood clan. By 1900, the reign of territorial terror was extinguished by the influx of wealthier, more resource-rich bloodlines, but in the late 1880s and early 1890s, they were the big dog on the Rocky Block. The tragic events of the day in question were never fully detailed by any papers. As a matter of fact, the only thing the Denver Post wrote in reference to the death of some 100 Native Americans near modern-day Redstone was a 2-paragraph blurb at the bottom of the 5th page in their November 15th issue that same year. Despite 100 lives being lost, not one death was mentioned. The eventual headline read, "Savages vacated from beautiful area near Elk West Mountains. Groundbreaking on new township expected to commence in the spring." And they got that part half right. The ground got broken, no doubt about it. Not by shovel or pickaxe, mind you, but rather broken by the sorrow and bloody vengeance of those so callously slaughtered, the innocent lives taken just after midnight had struck. Because it was in the wee hours of October 31st that the Osgood clan and a great many workers from the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company made their move. A group of 100 or so Ute Indians were making their yearly sojourn south through the resource-packed valley and had set up their elk-skin teepees not far down from what we modern folk would call the Penny Hot Springs. Just a quick stopover. They'd even traded furs with some of the locals earlier that same day. They meant no one any harm, least of all the Osgood clan. And truth be told, the Osgood clan didn't much care about those people either. The massacre was merely a message, and a bloody one at that. The early morning slaughter of nearly 100 Native American men, women, and God knows children was to create the kind of carnage that would let the surrounding people know who was at the top of the heap, and to satisfy a uniquely unquenchable bloodlust buried deep within the Osgood family bloodline. They had made no secret of their dirty deeds. The next day, sons of the clan would make the rounds at local watering holes that they'd ridden to via horseback, just to regale any and all who would listen with the tale of their bloody rampage. They'd said that the natives had asserted their possession of the land near the coke ovens that the Osgood clan was using to make some of its fortune. Most historians would tell you otherwise. In fact, almost all. The beehive ovens of coal owned by the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company were as foreign to the natives as the railways the company workers rode in on. The cover story concocted by the Osgood clan was a lot of lip service and hogwash. Mind you, This was 5 years after the Meeker Massacre of 1879 had forced droves of Native Americans into southwest Colorado and Utah reservations, and it was a good 20 years before the Ludlow Massacre of 1914, the latter of which was also executed by the once Osgood-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. And so, to the everyman of that day, coal interloping and coke oven ownership was certainly as good enough a reason as anyone needed to excuse the murder of dozens of so-called Injuns. The ugly deeds in the deep dark of the valley walls, screaming women and sobbing children, their wails cut short by sharpened blades and pointed metal. It was the sort of event that leaves a scar on the land, the kind of scar that never fully heals, in fact hasn't to this day. Its fury is still locked steadfast within the soil lying underfoot and below the Redstone Inn. Most would have no reason to know such a thing, but mud born from the unholy union of blood and soil has a copper hue, a metallic smell, and all the bad will one could hope for in a single shovelful of dirt. The spilled blood was enough to turn the future grounds of the Redstone Inn into a muddy quagmire for weeks after. Just as the blood mixed with dirt grew colder with each step towards winter, so did the blood of the general population grow cold towards the Osgood clan. There might have even been eventual local reciprocity for the family's misdeeds, but for the fact that fate had other plans. Because a funny thing happened a few years later when the fortunes of the Osgood family took a hard turn for the worse and they lost ownership of almost all the property they once held between Carbondale and modern-day Marble. The Colorado Fuel and Iron Company was sold off to pay accumulating debts. Whole branches of the family began to die off due to illness, due to disease, and more than an uncomfortable amount to sudden suicidal impulses. The locals long suspected that the Hallows Eve massacre might have been at the heart of their troubles, but all it amounted to was suspicion. Nowadays, the only trouble that the property ever sees is an ever-increasing accumulation of bones in the dank, musty pop-up ossuary that nobody asked for lying beneath the hotel grounds. And the staff knows to keep their mouths shut, by golly. Legend has it that those who learn of the hotel's dark secret and deign to speak of it are quickly added to the pile of bones below. By who, you may ask? Nobody knows, or at least nobody is saying. Most employees would never know, and those that ever do possess a vested interest in keeping what they know a secret. Housemaids finding the skeletal remains of a human being with the bottles of Merlot in the basement is never spoken of. The odd visitor claiming to have seen a person disappear into the dirt out behind the building just after midnight on Halloween is always met with incredulity and swift dismissal. The original staff thought that there might be a killer in the area, and even employed a gumshoe or two to try and ascertain who might be filling up the basement with bones. As with every passing year, there would be more down there. But someone must have quickly realized that in lieu of a thrill killer, what they had on their hands was an unfortunate problem of the supernatural variety, turning the space beneath the hotel into a bone bathroom. After decades, stacks and stacks of yellow-white bones built up, and today, towering, teetering piles of human remains of the skeletal variety still fill the ossuary. They almost hit the ceiling. And just to allay your concerns, or answer the obvious, it isn't the staff doing it. Some of the staff, the few that might be inclined to, or even possess the memory to speak of such things, they'd probably tell you that the legend is as follows. As long as the hotel gets its yearly sacrifice, all is well. Sure, the bones might be starting to reach the ceiling, and if anyone from law enforcement ever went down there and verified its contents, there would surely be a lot of questions surrounding the accumulation of human remains beneath the Redstone Inn. But that's a big if, and who's bothering to ask the right questions anymore? Nobody. That's who. Time either heals all wounds or hides them. Only history decides which is which. So, if you ever feel an inclination, a nagging, mayhaps that small voice in the back corridors of your psyche beckoning you to spend a spell at the beautiful Redstone Inn, make damn sure that that same voice isn't asking you to do it on Halloween. Make sure to cover your bases, my friend. You don't want to end up being psychically chewed up, physically turned inside out, drained of your blood, then unceremoniously defecated as a pile of unwanted, unrecognizable bones into the dusty basement grotto of some century-old hotel in the backwoods of Colorado. You should go trick-or-treating. You should have a few brews or have a few caps. Have a few toques or have a few lines, whatever your bag is. And you should go to a costume party. Go and meet a masked stranger and make out under the blacklights. You should go to a bar in a sexy cat outfit, then stop by your friend's mystery dinner party afterward. You should dress as your favorite Marvel superhero might and secure a designated driver. You should hang out with your friends and watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show and avoid Redstone like the plague. If you're really bored, you could tune into KDNK radio in Carbondale to see what kind of groovy stuff the DJs are piping through the radio waves during the witching hour before All Hallows Eve. Anything but visiting the Redstone Inn. Anything but that. The soiling of the past gives roots to the terrors of now, and it happens during the witching hour, this hour. It happens in the lead up to the time when long ago, right about 130 years, the greed of the industrial upper class trampled the sanctity of the native population, leaving specters in its wake, hungry specters that demand a yearly sacrifice. It's happening right now, in fact. Somebody, some hapless dullard or some Instagram famous dipstick heard the siren call of the inn and made a plan to stay there for the evening. Right now, that same siren call is marching them out to the spot out the back door between the lodgepole pines and next to the closed pool where the ground is especially soft, where they often have weddings in the summer, where there's no big boulders to get in the way of the descent. And once they reach that soft spot of land, they will be drawn down into the earthen tomb where the sins still spoil the soil. They're about to be digested by the malice of past indiscretions. With a mouthful of moist soil, no one can hear you scream. Right now, you live here because somebody lost their property to you. Right now, you eat because someone else is starving. Right now, you are safe and snug as a bug in wherever you are because you don't have to pay the price. Up in Redstone, somebody is paying the price for you. Somebody's being swallowed by the earth, spiritually absorbed, somehow digested and being swiftly shat out into a hole in the ground. You're safe because the Redstone Inn is digesting somebody for dinner and crapping them out into its cellar. I'm dying if I'm lying here, boys and ghouls. Not dying like whoever's currently being shitted, nay rather being positively sprayed into the basement is, but I suspect you get my meaning just the same. Be wary, folks. This is a dangerous hour, the witching hour. The same hour when 130 years ago so many died for the land you now occupy. If you get the sudden desire to visit Redstone Inn on Halloween, I'd run the other way. But that's just me.
Human traditions have long involved some variation of returning the deceased to the earth once their mortal flesh was no longer inhabited. Likewise, humans have slaughtered each other wholesale since the first weapons were created. A lifetime of experiences, hopes, and dreams are reduced to ruin in a single moment of bloodthirsty greed. And while the essence of the slain may have little power over their living murderers, who amongst us has walked past a graveyard at night without feeling a chill, as if unresolved intention itself called to us from the very soil? Transmissions from the Campfire is produced by myself, Daniel Kelley, and by Patrick Kitson. Tonight's episode was performed by Patrick Kitson and engineered by me. This transmission, like all others, is a copyrighted work that may not be reproduced or re-uploaded in part or in full without express written permission. Soil is an original work of fiction written by Patrick Quinn Kitson, creator of the emergent valley horror genre. More of Patrick's work is available in the short story collections Night, Day, and the newly released Bonedale, now available on Amazon and other booksellers. Later this year, look forward to Patrick's new work of fiction, the full-length novel Talented. If you enjoyed our time together, you can find more episodes of Transmissions from the Campfire on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast directory. Please subscribe to be notified when each new transmission commences. Now, zip your jacket and cinch your collar tight, as the light of the fire dies down and our power cells are once again depleted. Temporary warmth gives way to the icy bitterness of existence with the return of dawn. Stay safe, traveler, until we meet again around the campfire.